saying that recruiting professional talent for large corporations in 2026 is defined by a paradox of high application volumes coupled with a critical shortage of specific qualified skills. While automation has made it easier for candidates to apply, it has made it harder for recruiters to identify top talent, with 58% of business leaders reporting that finding skilled talent is more difficult than a year ago. Welcome back to Chatting with Slava the Jordanian. I'm your host, STJ, and today we are going to discuss some of the reasons why hiring is so challenging these days. So we did a little bit of research, and some of the reasons that the research showed are skill gap, technical shortages, AI-driven recruitment complexities, evolving candidate expectations, retention and internal mobility, and economic and structural pressures. And for that reason, I invited somebody that I've known over 20 years, Rachel. And in order for you guys to really understand why I invited her to be on this specific episode, let me read you her bio. Rachel is a self-made professional whose career path proves there is more than one way to build success. She began her journey in the technical hardware space, building audiophile quality, loudspeakers, and imaging equipment before moving into testing, quality assurance, and technical support roles. Right after graduating from technical high school, she worked steadily into leadership roles. 15 years later, after marriage and kids, she decided to go back to school as a single parent and got her degree while continuing to grow professionally. Now, with nearly 20 years of leadership experience, I asked Rachel to join us today and dive into the conversation that's happening in boardroom, startups, family businesses, and corporate offices everywhere. Thank you, Rachel, for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this episode with me. We talked about this a lot, and we're finally doing it.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry.
No worries. All right, so let's jump right into this conversation. And as you know, I own my own business. We have 3 practices. You saw me go through this journey, and it wasn't easy, but also it's very, very exciting. But I really want to find out from your end, where you're standing, how challenging is hiring and managing young professionals today, because we are constantly being challenged these days. And I just, I'm in my little fishbowl. I don't know what's going on in the corporate world. And I want you to give us some idea of these challenges that you guys face every day.
Yeah. So a lot of it is probably just finding the right people, not just with the same or correct skill set, but also finding someone who will work within the team that has the same culture and values that we want to see within the team, that we can all work together, because it's not just about, physical, technical skills. It's also about people skills as well.
So do you agree with me when I personally feel, and we talked about this every time you came through the office, is it just too much technology that make the young professionals rely on it, and then that way they lose the sense of the human touch about communication? Is it lack of communication skills? Do you think is lack of self-awareness? Because if you don't have communication skills, you lose that self-awareness and the social awareness skills too. But in the, we're not corporate. We're a small business, only 3 practices. Yeah, we have launched our franchise, but the franchise is a little bit different because the franchisees are going to take on that business, and they're the one they're going to be hiring and firing. So we are kind of not involved into that process as we are involved in it today, every day. And I just don't know. To me, it feels like they just don't have the right communication skills. And you mentioned also the structural values too, and we're going to get into it a little bit further into the episode. But what's your opinion as far as communication skills or skills gap, like the research have showed? And from that, they lack almost the self-awareness.
Well, because everything is online. They don't even go to malls as much as they used to. So the interaction with others has been diminished, especially since COVID. Everybody's working from home. We don't meet with clients face to face as often as we had. Some of our clients don't even want to meet with us face to face. They'd still rather, be completely remote and things of that nature. So I think it's just a lack of it, or a lot of it is a lack of getting out there and having those day-to-day interactions. We just seem to be lacking a lot of that.
You guys have a certain profile that you're looking for.
Correct.
And you post the job, and then you interview that candidate. So is it hard to find that strong candidate profile to hire in comparison to 10, 15 years ago, for example?
No, I think that it's still very similar, especially because we have online now. We're able to, being in the corporate world, we actually have recruiters and people in HR that will screen through a lot of the resumes and just give us basically the ones that on paper meet the best criteria. And then we'll do the screening from there. So there's always been a fairly large pool of individuals that apply for the jobs. One just right after COVID, I would say was probably the hardest, is to find the correct skill set of being able to learn remotely, completely without being in an office space, interacting with others personally. So I think that was probably the most challenging that I've seen.
I forgot that, during COVID, I can't even imagine hiring during COVID because you guys couldn't even meet together. So you had to interview, remotely, and you guys had to train remotely too, no? Yeah. How does that work? I mean, how difficult was that?
For me, I found it pretty difficult because I like to be hands-on. So it was a bit of a challenge, especially coming into the workplace at a new company back in 21, so just after the COVID bubble. And they had fortunately done quite a bit of online training and made some materials available. But after that time frame, I was able to provide some feedback as well and just say, it would have been nice to have X, Y, and Z. And we did gear towards that, and we created an onboarding package that allowed others to come in and learn remotely as well. And everybody's got a different learning style, but in the technical field where I'm at, hands-on is pretty key. If you can't see it, you can't touch it, then it's harder to learn. So
yeah, that probably made it even more challenging because, if you're asking the candidate these days or the young professionals that, you need to get your hands dirty, and they are so standoffish, about that because they want everything remote because they don't trust or they don't like the confrontation. It's almost like they believe every conversation is a confrontation. And that's what we teach the team, that not every conversation is a confrontation. It's just communication. You have to, there's nothing like sitting in front of somebody and watching their eyes and watching their facial expressions and watching their body language. And that's where the old saying comes from, is read the room, yes. Analyze, right? Analyze, don't just say stuff. Don't just do stuff. You need to read the room and figure out who you are talking to before you say the wrong things or bite your tongue because it's like, oh my God, I can't believe I just said that. That was the wrong personality. And that's what we teach our team, is to analyze the personality in front of you in order to customize that conversation. But to us, from my end, it seems like the new generation, they trust AI, they trust, the automated devices more than they trust humans, because those devices, they don't judge. They're not going to judge them. They're not going to hold them accountable that you did this wrong, you did that wrong. You need to learn this in order to keep your job. You need to perform in order to keep the job. There's no accountability with devices. So they want us to act like the devices. They want us to, treat them like devices, and it's almost impossible. So I can't even imagine training remotely. That will drive me insane because I don't know what how they're moving. I don't know how they are reacting to instructions, how they are responding to not command, but it's like, okay, can you please do this? Well, if they say, I don't know how to do it, you don't know because you're shy, or you don't know that you really don't know, or you don't know because you don't want to learn. You can't get that from being a remote training. So I can't even imagine. Now, from that, were you guys successful getting these candidates trained remotely, or it completely failed?
No, we were successful because we still, to this day, we're hiring people that are, remote. And so what we've been able to do is create our test environments, because obviously I worked in a software company. So everything that we did could be completely remote. We didn't need physical offices and so forth. However, to be able to support the systems, you need to be self-motivated. And those are some of the questions that we would ask during the interview process. What is their learning style? What makes them successful? And it has to be a combination of not being afraid to ask for help, knowing who to go to, not just sitting idly by and waiting for somebody to say, okay, here's what you got to do next. You have to take the initiative and, be self-motivated and self-driven so that you're going out to find the information, because that's the only way that they will be successful. Because it's not going to come to you any other way. You've got to go out and look for it. And so we created a training program around that and put in, ways to measure their learning and how they were learning. So at different points in time, it's like after 30 days, you should be able to do X. After 60 days, you can do X and Y. And then we would, test them. But the clients, they would be client facing, and the clients will let us know as well. Because if they're not getting the right amount of support, they're going to be the first ones to tell us and let us know.
Oh, yeah. They're not the clients, just like patients. No offense, but they're not shy.
That's right.
Because, they're paying, right? They're paying for the service. So they're paying for the service. They expect certain experience for that service. So I think the best feedback, and you can sift through, of course, feedbacks, but the best feedback is the client feedback, because they are standing on the other side of it, watching that performance. But I agree with you. You hit on a couple of points we just discussed in a previous episodes about, taking initiative, taking accountability, testing their application. A lot of them, they will interview so well, they will say the right things. I think they, chat GBT it or something like that. It's like, okay, I know exactly what I'm going to say. And then the amazing thing, right after the first day they start, I'm like, what are they doing? Total opposite, like Jekyll and Hyde, total opposite from the person that interviewed, but they master that performance just to secure that position. And then you're like, all right, like you said, within a month, you should be able to do this. Is it lack of training? Is it lack of application? Is it lack of initiative? Or maybe they're learning in a different way. Maybe our training skills needs to change because their retention or application skills or comprehension skills a little bit different than what we are used to. But the first 90 days, that grace period, I'm telling you, the stuff that we have seen, you can't make that up. No. You can't make it up because they're so clever. They're almost like street smart, maneuvering, through the interview process, through the application process, like I said, and then they secure the position. And that's when they get comfortable after they secure the position, the true colors come out. And they're like, oh my God, we went through the process. And then you regret rejecting other candidates, right? because he accepted them, and it's like, okay, what if the other candidate was so much better? I just, and then sometimes it's too late because you can reach out to the candidate and like, I'm not interested, or I found something else. But it's very, very challenging these days, and I hate to say it, post-COVID, what they call the wake-up call, and in some of the personalities that are introverted, they loved the COVID time, because that's it. I don't have to go to work. I can be home. I don't have to be accountable, responsible for everything. I can just do my thing from home. And some of them actually could not come out again post-COVID. And we had team members, hygienists, they could not come back into the dental field. They just stayed home and it felt much comfortable. So do you think that, do you feel that their expectations are different compared to 10, 15 years ago? Expectations from the employer or somebody like you who's a supervisor or a manager or is a director, or simply they are more vocal or they're too vocal? Are they too expressive, or they just have different expectations than my generation, your generation?
I think it's a pretty good combination of a couple of things. The expectations is definitely different post-COVID. Even for some of the same people like our generation, they don't like the commute. It's a waste of time. I personally am the same way, but then we're working remote for so long. There's got to be a balance for what how often you interact with people instead of hiding behind this, the computer screen or not coming out of your own home. A lot of people get out of any kind of routine. They don't, go to the gym in the morning. They don't, do anything but get out of bed and walk down the stairs and jump online for work. They don't go on camera. They don't see people. And so I think that is not just the newer generation, but just since COVID. And I think that we're starting to see people now, like myself, who want something that's in between. I don't want to be at home all the time anymore. I miss the interaction with people. If we could, go out and see clients at least once a month or once a quarter, that would help a lot. So I am definitely looking for now in a different way. Like I think I want to be, 2 or 3 days in an office in some way. So I think that it's just a little bit of both. I do think that the newer generation, keeping in mind I have kids and, fortunately they're not like this, but they almost feel entitled, like they're owed something, just.
Your kids don't feel they're entitled.
No, mine don't.
Oh, I was going to say, it's like, no, they're not. They're perfect.
No,
I know them.
But there are people in their generation that do. It's like, I have a job. It's like, pay me. No, you have a job. You have a responsibility with this job. And there's, things that they're required to do in order to keep their job. It's not just as simple as, oh, I have the job and now you just have to treat me this way. A lot of companies are going to, kind of like an example, a lot of companies are going to not have earned time. They're just unlimited PTO. And what that does, it actually allows people to, the companies benefit because they don't have to pay it when they leave, but, the employees leave. But others feel like maybe they shouldn't take it because it's not like earned. So the older generation, I feel, doesn't take as much time off, which the companies are looking for and liking that idea. But the younger generation, it's like, hey, it's unlimited PTO. I'm going to be out every Monday and every Friday. So that's just another expectation that either they have, and then as supervisors, we need to reset. So it's a very different dynamic than it was.
So it sounds to me like it's expectations, but they're very vocal about their expectations too. Like, the entitlement is not only about, you pay me, I have a job and I need to be treated that way in a certain way. But what you're saying is, no, you need to earn your keep. It is. So they look at everything very transactional relationship, but at the same time, they need to understand this is an employment relationship. You perform and I pay you, but the other group, so that it is expectations. The other group is they vocalize their, that my entitlements, like, but that's, I am doing my job, so pay me, or I have a job, then I need benefits, or I have a job, I need more than just payment because I am doing a job. So they will ask before they perform. And that's what I'm talking about as a transactional relationship, that, you you deliver for me, and then I'll perform for you. Not the other way around. Our generation's the other way around. You gotta perform to earn, like I said, to earn your keep. So it is expectations, but some of them are very vocal about it, and they're not shy. Like I tell my husband, Ehab, Ehab is like, I would never ask my boss what they ask of us. I would never. I'll be so shy, and it would be embarrassed to even like think it. You know what I'm saying? But they, like I said, the level of entitlement, which is interesting because you would think that generation hiding for 3 months behind closed doors during COVID, and then coming out, with the wake up call post COVID, but some of them either they really became very, very introverted, and the other side, they are so unrealistic with their expectations. Do you agree? So, there is a common narrative that young employees don't want to work hard. Do you agree with that?
Yes. Yeah. I've seen and just the difference in what you would put in a day versus what some of the people put in for, it's like, I showed up, I made 3 calls, I'm tired today, whereas we were in the office on our feet doing all kinds of things, and our days were 8, 10, 12-hour days depending on your field and what you did.
And not only that, juggling life, because according to your bio, you're a single mom with kids, and you ended up going back to school. Probably you were working at the same time, no?
Yes.
Yeah. So juggling life. Can you imagine this generation doing that? I mean, oh my God, if they have to just change the schedule because of the daycare, right, drive, they're like, okay, I need to redesign my whole, day because daycare is not going to take my kid on time. So where does that come from that I don't want to work hard? Do you think because of digital devices make it look like it's so easy to earn money, those influentials on social media thinking that you can stay home, earn money by taping videos and publishing them on social media, and somebody can sponsor you, be a YouTuber. Is that the case?
I don't know, because it takes special people to be able to do that too, and to be successful at it. And there are plenty that are, but I think that there's more that are not. So I don't know if there's any statistics behind that. I certainly haven't been following that part of it, but yeah, I think it's hard too. It's, just in general, it's different. I think that work ethics are different from what they used to be.
Now, you mentioned a couple of times when I saw you as you were shifting through, positions in your career, that a lot of even the high executives that you stumble upon, they just don't know what they're doing, some of them. But how do they get to that position? Like, I don't get it. And it's not only you. I hear stories from, big corporation, even Apple, Amazon, all these big corporations, so-and-so left. But some of them are, doing all the work, or they have the kind of prestige or the reputation that they know what they're doing, but they're not. So I always wonder, how do they get, is it who you know, not what you know, is still happening in the corporation world?
It's gotta be. Just giving my example for the past year, someone got hired, they brought a whole team with them. They went down a path that was going to make the company better. And, a year later, they're reverting back to the model that they had before these people. They're no longer there. Half of the team is not even there. And it almost seems like they used to do a really good job when they did it, but as soon as they started delegating out to everybody, they lost touch, they lost control, and they lost the ability to listen to, the people that were still doing the work and saying, here's the problems, here's what we're facing. Because they've gotten to that level and they know better. So I think some of it is that way. And I think that you'll see that with leaders that aren't as successful as, and leaders are one thing, and they're a different type of person versus a boss that just tells you what to do, right? Because some people you want to, be engaged with them and to work with them and for them because they're positive and they're, they lead by example. And I think that's a skill that's not necessarily something that you can teach. It's like you have it or you don't.
Yeah, you have to go through life to gain that experience. And that experience, no school can teach you that. And the only way you can learn something like that if you read a book about somebody that went through the experience, or doing podcasts like we're doing. It's like, hey, this is what's going to happen. Trust the process. This is reality, right? But for you to say, I got an MBA, I'm not knocking anybody that has an MBA. My sister-in-law does, from Penn State. She's brilliant, right? And she works for the reserve in the National Reserve in New York. She's very, very smart. But there are others that they're very academic and they are very good test takers and they make it through professional schools. And just like in dentistry too, I had colleagues that are brilliant in the classroom, but when we took the actually lectures, but when we went to the practical, the clinical practice, they failed miserably. They just could not, they lacked the ability to apply that knowledge to go from here to their hands into the patient's mouth, or they had horrible bedside manners that nobody wants to see them. So, and luckily they discovered that in dental school, and then they figured that, I'm not going to be able to practice dentistry. I'm going to go into research and stay in academia, whether they went into residency or they went the research route. But my question, I guess, is, is it still happening that somebody that's up there so high, they're looking down, it's like, I don't care, I made it. I don't really care what happens underneath. This is somebody else's problem, and somebody else is going to be, responsible, taking care of it, because I made it up top and that was my goal and I'm good to go, kind of thing. And it's still happening these days, no?
It is. And you hear all the time, oh, we have an open door policy. If there's something wrong, come and talk to us. But it's one thing to say that, and then there's another to actually take the feedback, whether it's, positive or, negative or, constructive, and, not be targeted for that. You see that a lot. Because it's like, they have the degree or they've made it to that level, and now it's just like, don't bother me. And there's, a lot of people that do sit at the top that do not have that attitude. And those are the ones that you see succeed. Those are the people that their clients like them. You hear more positive feedback, from the clients versus, the ones that like, they just don't listen. We've gone to the conferences, we've talked to them, we've expressed our concerns. It's been 3 months and we still haven't gotten or seen what the promises that, they said. So it does still happen.
So what happens if somebody like you that's been in that industry for 20 years, and then you have a young executive and you're saying that this person is really taking us down the wrong route, and you go and you say something about it, is that perceived well, or is it like, no, give him another chance? Because sometimes I feel like we are pampering them too much. You know how we now remember our playgrounds back in the day? They were not as safe as they are now. Now they have padded grounds, and their slides, their slides are plastic. We used to have the metal, that's burning metal that burned our thighs. The rusted chains in our swings. None of that. So there's a lot more of cushioning and listening and understanding and like a lot more compassion to like, give him another chance, give him a break. Do you face that? Like, dude, this guy does not, or this person doesn't know what they're doing, and I'm just telling you something's wrong. How's that perceived these days?
It depends on where you're at. Now, if you're complaining about upper management, you could put a label on your back and basically, become a target for everything. Or, you could be trying to either defend one of your team members or not defend them. because there's a lot of different policy, just like the playground was different back in the day. There's a lot of process that you have to go through. I mean, as you know, you're a business owner, that you can't just fire somebody and let them go. There's got to be documentation and reasoning for a lot of that. So it depends on who you're complaining to or trying to give constructive criticism for. You're very limited, as you know, from what you're able to do. You just can't, this person's not performing, we've had a conversation. No, it's going to be like a 30-day written procedure type thing. And then versus whether or not you go and you maybe complain about your boss's boss. Some people don't like that. It has to do with the culture of the company, because my last boss, I could talk to them and I could tell them everything and it was completely safe. Now you go up a level and that was not no longer the case. So, I don't know if I answered your question, but it's tough.
No, it is. And what I'm trying to find out if the world have changed. I'm saying, like you said, the culture have changed, because back in the 80s, my dad was an executive and you were walking on eggshells. I remember he was a CEO, but still when he went to the owner with like, hey, something is going on. And the owner trusted him 100%, but he had before he approached the owner, he had to think twice about it. But if the owner trusted you, like I said, his word against that person's word, he's fired or she's fired. Mm-hmm. Saudi Arabia, they weren't a lot of female employees, but these days, I agree. I mean, we have a brand, we have a culture, we have a process, we have director of HR, we have a VP of operation for that reason, because me as a business owner, I cannot go through the process every time I see a team member that's not performing. I don't have time. That's why you hire people that really understand the process and understand the procedures. And they have to go through, give him a warning, give him some time, give him another chance. And then you document all that and present, hey, you got 3 chances. It's not working out. Then you're out. So, but speaking of culture, I agree with you 100%. The culture of the company will definitely determine how the team is able or feels comfortable enough to be, for the higher management or the owners to be, accessible. I always say, be approachable, not attainable. You cannot be attainable, because the moment they get you, they just want to just control everything, and they don't understand the business as much or the purpose sometimes of the business as much as you do. So being accessible, being approachable, that's fine. But as long as there is that, common understanding or common agreement that we are here for the greater good. We are here for what we call the collective, to save the culture, to maintain the brand, so we can keep operating and the business keeps going. But it is fascinating with bigger corporation that this is still happening. So it sounds like the new generation did not change that. Like when you say that if you're going to complain to the upper management, sometimes you'll have, a target on your back that is like, oh, don't talk to her because she's going to complain about all that. I would think with the new generation that change, but it depends on the culture of the company. Like Apple is one of the first companies they wanted to have open forum. Everybody's equal. There's no hierarchy. There's no management. You can talk to anybody. You can approach anybody. And that's the Apple, actually, Steve Jobs started that new. So not wanting to work hard, do you think it's a way of oversimplifying their responsibility to earn money, or it's just a whole new definition of what success is all about?
I don't know. I think that if you could find the answer for that, you'd probably solve a lot of I certainly don't know.
Let's get on to it, Rachel, and be rich, and then we can make a lot of money so we don't have to work. Yep. So that is the golden question, right?
Yeah.
Because do you think that they're playing game with, by oversimplifying their responsibility, I think not taking their job seriously. I had a team member 2 years ago. I was in Nashua, and she was very extroverted, very funny, very approachable, and I needed her to, I asked her to do something, and she kept coming back to me, and that task was not completed. She came back to me 3 times, and finally I took her onto the side, and I looked at her, and I said, you need to take your job a little bit more seriously. Like, and basically indirectly, I was telling her, I gave you a directive and I need this done. And she was clinical. It wasn't admin. And you know what? A week later, she quit.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
Well,
just because I asked her to take her job seriously. What's that all about?
Right. Well, there's probably one way that you could look at that, and maybe she just didn't understand what she needed to do. So even if she had some of the skills to do it, maybe she was great on paper, but not, not in actuality. I don't know this person. I don't know, who you're or what they were doing, but I definitely know that if my boss asks me to do something, I'm going to do it. Right. And, when I ask others to do something, if they don't complete it within a certain time, I'll go back to them and I'll ask them if there's a reason for it. And I'll try to be understanding as to maybe they didn't have the correct tools. Maybe there was something that I needed to do to help them be successful. But yeah, I don't understand why when, people ask you to do something, it's like, that's your job. Don't you want to have a job tomorrow? Then you probably want to get it done.
Right. So this person was clinical. She was an assistant. She can take x-rays. She's x-ray certified. She has been in dentistry for about 2-3 years. So it's nothing new. It just, for some reason, and that brings me to the next point, which is being triggered. They dysregulate so much. So something happened that day and she was almost spinning, right? Spinning. And she was not producing. Even if she was producing, she was not giving you a quality result. She would just coming at me, asking me the same question. I was like, okay, I'll answer the question. She goes, okay, got it. And she went, right? And she came back 5 minutes, asking me, she was spinning, right? She was almost glitching. Something was going on that triggered her. And I asked her, are you okay? And we asked the whole team before we start the day, anybody needs accommodation? Anybody needs a break? Anybody needs to be on the phone? Anybody has appointments? Because we need to know in order to accommodate you. Because if you don't know, we can't help you. She kept coming at me, to me, asking the same question over and over again. So I'm like, you know how to do this because I worked with you for a while. You are certified to do this. I just asked you. She could not execute the directive. It's not she didn't know how to do the task. She just couldn't execute it for some reason. She couldn't follow through it. So when I pulled her and I said, are you okay? She goes, yeah, I'm fine. She was joking and she's very extroverted, people oriented. That's why she was amazing chairside. But that day, and I don't know what made me say this, you need to take your job a little bit more seriously. And then her whole face changed. And a week later, she quit. Yeah, which was very, very interesting. So, like I said, is it psychologically she didn't feel safe? Maybe something triggered her, whether in her personal life or something happened at work or the patient said something to her. I have no idea, because I was surprised that she would quit because she's very communicative. She would quit without saying, hey, Dr. Slava, that day I was not focused of that day. I couldn't get whatever you asked me to get done is because da-da-da-da-da. She didn't even share that. She just quit. So it could be something major was happening in her life that triggered her. And that's one of the challenges that we have these days. And I'm going to bring you in, Rachel, to find out what your opinion about that is. They get triggered so easily. Is it because I don't know, their diet? Is it because that their attention span is so short? Is it because they're so used to digital devices? But they get triggered and they dysregulate it so fast and so often through an 8-hour day. Did you guys experience that too with the young hire?
We did actually. And it actually happened to me personally, where I was explaining the different levels that we have within the team. And had absolutely nothing to do with that particular person. It was just simply their job title. And they had worked their way up from our customer service help desk, and now they were an associate level in our customer success team. And when I was introducing her to another team member who was a newer, however, they had higher experience, so they were hired in new above this person, and I was explaining the role, and that was it. She basically became really quiet. She stopped engaging. She just, I honestly think she walked away from her computer and just left it open. I don't know, because a lot of the times we weren't on camera or anything. But that got back to me where she felt insulted because she was being called an associate level, but that is her job title. That was nothing geared towards her, but she took it that way, and I've never seen anybody react that way. I mean, it's your title. You should be happy with that. You've earned it. Like, it was a step up at one point, right? So
yeah, it
sets them off.
I know something, and sometimes you're like, what did I do? Like, you feel really bad because our generation is all about, obliging and accommodating. And, as a leader, especially when you walk through the different levels that you had to go through in order to get to your position, I'm sure you accommodated and oblige and being so, tolerant and understanding, because it's like, okay, I want to be a better leader. I want to be a better, mentor for this young group. But it sounds like, the work alignment of the value and their understanding of what that title expects from them. Their understanding was like, okay, my value is a lot higher than the value that Rachel is talking, that how Rachel's talking to me about. So we're not compatible. It's not a match. I'm out. Mm-hmm. But and also it's so easy for them to quit. Like my generation, my culture, you don't quit, you don't doubt.
You know what I'm saying? Something else. If you don't like it, then you have a conversation. They don't like to have complex and conflicting conversations. Or they're difficult, and it's okay to have a difficult conversation. Sometimes that's where the best growth come from, or could just be like it was a misunderstanding, and you have this difficult conversation. And you're like, oh, was that it? Oh, you could either apologize or it's like, oh no, well, we can definitely,
Yeah, because they rather assume what happened than to have that conversation. Because like I said in the beginning of the episode, every conversation is a confrontation, but sometimes it's the tough love thing, right? Sometimes you have to have that tough conversation in order to break things down so you can figure out what the heck is going on, and sometimes, like you said, it could be something so it's like, oh, I didn't know. Well, you didn't know because we didn't talk about it, because you assume and you start making stuff up. When you making stuff up, you're like trapped in your head, and then you have the misconception about people, you misjudge people, you misjudge the situation, and then they end up quitting and losing that job that you thought when they were interviewing. It's like, I really, really want this, Dr. Slava. I was like, okay, show me how much you really want this. Not by begging me and telling me, show me how much you want this. But like I said, the moment they secure the position, it's like, okay, now I got the title, I got the position, I get to relax and not do anything. And then they lose their job that way. So it sounds like, the compatibility in the belief system, compatibility in the value alignment, and also they have a very interesting, identity, the definition of their identity too, like who they are and what they want to do for, the rest of the life, or at least during that career shift. I hear a lot of candidates coming from other offices like, oh my God, the culture was toxic. The environment was horrible. We were never respected. And then they come to a culture like us that's very understanding, I like to believe, and very like accommodating and all that. And then they act just like the culture it's a learning behavior, right? Just like the culture they left, they acted in our culture. But I thought you did not agree with that culture, and that's why you switched jobs. And I'm telling you, 80% of the shift, as far as we're concerned in our brand, from one office to our office, is that we need to get out of that toxic attitude or negative attitude or toxic culture. We want a better place to work in. And then when they, like I said, secure the position, they become the toxic, or they turn out to be the toxic person. So the condition or the culture that we're talking about that was negative, it was them causing it.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? But they claim that, I need to escape from it because I want a better world to work in. But it turns out to be they are the ones. So it's almost like the lack of recognizing their identity and, what they are all about. So communication skills we covered. More frequent feedback, validation. They ask for that all the time, but you don't get feedback from them. It's almost like I am okay, but you're not okay. Like they ask a lot from us, but they don't want to deliver from them the same. There's no balance and accountability, I believe. Do you agree?
I've seen that, and it does depend on the person. But I will make an effort, and for the last, 6-7 years, we have weekly one-on-ones with my team members. I'm like, how is everything going for you? We talk about work. A lot of times we talk about personal things, just, to get to know them and who they are. And then I always ask them, what can I do to help you? Do you need anything from me? Is there anything that's blocking you from getting, X, Y, and Z done? Or do you need help? And sometimes they'll get feedback where they are stuck, but most of the time, because I do take the opportunity to ask them how they are, what they need, I don't have to wait for, they don't have to wait for me to ask them. They'll come to me and they'll approach me. It's like, hey, can you do this for me? And I'm like, absolutely. I know you can do it. And they just didn't want to have like a difficult conversation or something like that. But I've seen them do it before. And in that, space, I will help them out and do that. But if they're just constantly coming to me and they don't want to have those difficult conversations, and I'll go back and I'm like, how about you put it together? And then I'll, look it over, and then we can send it out together, So, because sometimes I don't want to be the one to receive, like, oh, who are they to tell me to do this? So they have a little bit of intimidation from it, and they just need somebody else, to help them out. But I mean, it really does depend on the individual. And I think that the team that you have working for you and not for you in that regards, but together as a team, right? I think that is important. And sometimes you get a great team, and there's sometimes that there's just a bad egg in there. So.
No, it's true. And unfortunately, going back to digital devices, how they're so dependent. I call it the codependent relationship. Like if I don't have my device, I'm not going to be okay. If I have enough signal, I have my computer on, I'm going to be okay. That's so unhealthy. But what that did, being on devices all the time, we have noticed their attention span is so short. You cannot teach. Like they come to me, it's like, Dr. Slava, I really want to learn this. I'm like, okay, sit down, let me teach you. It's like, oh, they're gone, squirrel, that kind of thing. It's like, so you ask me to teach you this procedure, you need to be patient and you need to focus a little bit. But Dr. Slava, is too long. I'm like, can you just tell me? I'm like, I can tell you, but we are in a clinical environment. You have to apply your, physical skills, your eyes, you have to put your body in a certain position. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to have the tactile sensitivity for instruments. It takes time to build that experience. Oh, I'm just going to Google it. I'm just going to watch a YouTube. I had associates. They'll come to me and they say, Dr. Slava, I want to take this tooth out, but I never done this before. And I said, well, let's work it together. You have an option, either refer it or let's say why you think you can't do it. And then right after I start talking, those are dentists, start talking to them about just the process of have to learn something. Within 3 minutes, okay, I'm just going to YouTube it. I'm like, and they walk out of the room. It's unbelievable. I think from my end, as a mentor, as a clinician, trying to teach a new generation, it's their attention span. But yet they'll be watching TikTok 3 hours a day. That's fine. But try to have me show them or explain to them the difference between the materials or what works. And they ask us, like, what should I use for this? I'm like, well, you can use this for this application. You can use it. They're out of the door. They're like, all right, it's just too much.
Instant gratification. Everybody wants everything right now. at their fingertips. They don't want to wait for it. They want it yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes I tell them, give me a chance to process your questions. I'm not an iPad. You know what I'm saying? But they are used to, like you said, especially ChatGPT right now, it just ruin everything because you put something in and then it gives you all kind of information. They think they know it just because ChatGPT. And I tell them that if you're gonna go by the ChatGPT, you gotta check your facts because you don't know this. So, it's AI, Dr. Slava. It goes around and check all the facts. I'm like, no. You gotta read history. You gotta reflect on the context. It's especially when you have science, right, that you're dealing with, like dentistry. But moving on to the last question, do you think that we can train this generation to think long term in a short term digital world? Seriously, do we have hope? Is there hope?
I mean, at some point you're going to figure out that AI is not all of that, and that it can't do everything that humans can. However, I don't know whether we'll see it soon enough. I do hear a lot of, there's a couple of news articles that I've seen where unless you're doing physical work, almost like the blue collar or if you don't have those technical skills anymore, then you'll just be replaced by AI. I was watching this article and it's like, you're an accountant. Put in somebody's tax return, the entire tax return, and see, how it comes out. And it's amazing what these chatbots can do. So if you're only working behind a computer every day, you're the ones that could potentially be at risk. So I don't know. There's still a lot of jobs out there, yours specifically, that requires hands-on that you can't do from behind a computer screen. So they've got to figure it out fast, or we're going to all lose our teeth, not have good,
Well, let me, I'm going to just throw this out there. Robotics are becoming the thing in dentistry. I was in Miami, I think 2 years ago, for this progressive marketing company. And one of the things they're showing, like the new, innovations in dentistry. And I got to use a robotic arm that actually drops implants. Let me I had a hysterectomy 2012 and my surgeon didn't even scrub in. She was in another room controlling the robots. And they got my uterus, it might be gross, out of my belly button. And I have 2 tiny little incisions. Those were the robotic bits were in me. Now, her partner was in the OR just in case something goes bad and ready to scrub in and jump in. But she took pictures of that surgery. It looks like a mannequin, looks fake. And there's no blood. How's that even? When you watch YouTube, I'm not sure if you watch YouTube videos about surgery, heart surgery, blood everywhere. This was clean because the robotics arms, there's no cuts, there's no, cutting tissue and bleeding all over the place. But it was amazing. And that's 2012. So now robots, because of AI, are going to take a place, some kind of agency, so to speak, in the practice of, it's been practiced in medicine, but now in dentistry too. So, but this generation needs to remember that even with innovation, even with technology, the human mind is behind it. They think it was created. Like AI was, one day you woke up and AI was created. Human minds have created all this technology, all these digital devices that rely on, but I think what digital devices gives this generation and on the autonomy. They are able to turn off that device if they don't like what device is doing, if they don't like what they're hearing, if they don't like what they're reading. No judgment, right? Nobody can actually read their, body language and they can turn it off and walk away from it and move on to the next thing. There's no that relationship, right? There's no that communicative skills between them. There's no communication skills between you and a device. It's just a device. You turn it off, you charge it, and you start all over again the next day. So I don't think it's about, a young hire, or is it a leadership evolution? That's what I worry about. I mean, if you guys are, the new generation are so impatient, has like the short attention span, who's going to lead them? Like when we're gone, how are they going to be Is there not going to be robots are going to be leaders?
That's so.
Oh my God, Rachel, that is a very scary thought. So, anyways, what the last thing that I want to ask you, and it could be as brief as possible or as detailed as possible. What is your recommendation if you were standing right now on TED Talk and you said, okay, the number one advice for the new generation that want to become leaders, what would be your advice?
Lead by example. If you want to have someone that works hard and to have a balance, you need to be able to provide that. You need to be able to, not micromanage them, but allow them to have some creativity. There's more than one way to do certain things. So just because you find, a method effective doesn't mean that it's going to be the way that they might find it the most effective. So just be open. Lead by example, be a decent human being, don't have regrets, and just live like you want to see other people live. And you do how you would like those people to, reciprocate. And I think that's just in life in general.
Yeah, and that's what our parents taught us, right? Lead by example. Don't compete with anybody else but yourself. Don't compare yourself with anybody else. Because those are the triggers that these guys have, right? I want this. I want somebody's life. I want to look like that. I want to live this life. And those sometimes overwhelming to your brain, and it will trigger you. I agree with you 100%. And I hope you come back again, Rachel. Let's revisit and see where robots are at.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course, anytime. I was so happy you agreed on it, and I hope this is a long-term relationship digitally in front of the camera too. So we have reached the end of our hour. As a reminder, these episodes are uploaded weekly on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube by the Mindset Mastery Moments. If you have enjoyed this, please like, share, and hit the notification bell. That way you won't miss any episode, and it's free. This community is sponsored by humanity and supported by everyday people's stories, just like Rachel's story that we heard today. So please find us, join us, support us, and as always, be kind. Thank you for watching and listening. Hope to see you next time. This is Slava the Jordanian.